If that hasn't gotten people to wake up yet, what will? Wake up and realize these people don't care about you. The Libertarian Party is the only party that actually cares about your rights to liberty and freedom. What's up, North Carolina, and welcome back to the Liberty Inc. podcast, your source to all things liberty in NC. And we have a special guest today. It is Travis Groo, the first ever repeat guest here on the Liberty Inc. podcast. He is the chair of the Wake County Libertarian Party, arguably, definitely the largest, but I would argue probably the most successful county affiliate in the state. He's running for North Carolina House 41, third time running as a candidate. Travis, welcome to the show, man.
Mike, it's great to be back on. I really appreciate you having me on. I loved it last time, and I'm very excited about this time. So let's have a good time. Let's have fun, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Well, first off, thank you for the strategy that you're running out of Wake County, and having so many great candidates. I've had so many conversations like for the podcast, but even just getting to know some of the candidates, chatting before filming and after filming. You guys are doing some big things there, and that's pretty awesome, man. One thing I'm curious about, right? Because I'm on my county affiliate, and now on the LPNC. What's your strategy, man? How are you getting such good candidates and all kind of willing to show up? What's that process? What are you guys doing? Walk us through why Wake is fielding so many great candidates and how you're finding them.
I tell you what, man, it's really not rocket science.
Right.
It's about consistency. We're meeting every single week consistently, and we can promote that. We can invite new libertarians, curious folks who may be interested in libertarianism. We can invite candidates to come address our party. We've had 6 candidates for sheriff of Wake County come to us individually to try to win our votes and to win our approval.
Wow.
And they're actually concerned with what the libertarians think now. And it's amazing because we're turning the tide, and we're changing the face of politics here in Wake County without even being elected, which is really amazing. So, I think the strategy really is just being consistent, being on time, and doing the same thing over and over again, and being passionate about it, and working hard, because it doesn't come easy. It's a struggle sometimes to get to meet up after a long day of work. You're exhausted. You don't feel like it, but it's for the greater good. And just showing up is 80% of the success. So I just feel like consistency for Wake LP is really what has brought us to where we're at right now. And so we're running 17 candidates.
Wow. For
19 seats. So just about every voter in Wake County will have a libertarian option, which is amazing. Some of them will have 3 to 4 candidates on their ballot. So, including Shannon Bray, he's also in Wake. He's the 18th candidate. But for General Assembly, we're running 17, which I'm very proud of. It's a record number this year.
Yeah. And
so we're just getting started with campaign planning, and we're looking to make a splash this cycle. And we have some really good ideas that we're putting forward. We have some rock star candidates, so I'm really proud of them. But really, that's it, man. It's consistency, it's hard work, it's determination. And I believe that we could model this throughout the whole state if we can break it down and make it simple.
Yeah, man. It's funny. So I was talking to my local county affiliate, right? So you're in Wake, which for, hopefully, most of our audience is North Carolina. Hopefully, that's the Raleigh area, right? You've got the luxury of quite a few people there. But I'm in Gaston County, and we share an affiliate with Cleveland, which is pretty rural, right? So I've kind of had this in my head, and it's something that, my local party is probably tired of me harping on, but you left a real impression on me when you said, the whole weekly meeting thing, right? Our challenge is we're having, struggling to get some people to show up to monthly meetings, right? So how do you go from monthly to weekly? And we were thinking, maybe doing like weekly hangouts or bi-weekly. I think that we were talking a little bit about this before we started filming. I'd love to just put you kind of like, let's say you're outside a wake, right? And you move somewhere that's pretty rural, right? Like I know, hey, Travis Groo is going to be a libertarian activist regardless of where he is. If he leaves North Carolina, I know that you're not about to stop, right? So let's say that you move to kind of a rural area. How do you do that? How do you take the wake model, right, and adapt that to a place where, there's not a lot of places to go in Cleveland County, right? As far as, when we go there to Cleveland, I kind of threw out the idea like virtual hangouts, right? Talk to me about, you guys, I think probably had to deal with some of that in COVID, right? Wake got pretty strict with things plus that. What is that kind of how you think that smaller affiliates who maybe can't do the whole weekly thing or are too sparsely populated in their counties, is that viable, or would you have some other thoughts, I guess?
No, I think that's a great idea. We had to really think outside the box when everything shut down. We actually did have guest speakers on Zoom. We do a guest speaker about every month or every 6 weeks. We invite someone to come speak to us. And we've had to do some Zoom meetings where we weren't allowed to meet in person. So that's how we improvised. And it's a really good idea. And I think if like, let's say I moved to Timbuktu, North Carolina, somewhere, wherever, I think the strategy would be to find out who's a registered libertarian and go knock on their door and tell them, hey, we meet here every week, for coffee or for food and a drink every week, and invite them out, give them a business card, have something to leave behind, and then work with what you have. I mean, it may be small, but you can grow it. And what I mean by that is run a couple candidates, even if you have to do it yourself. The only way for voters to know that there's another option is to see it on the ballot over and over again. So let's say you run 3 to 4 libertarian candidates in your district, and you keep doing that over and over again, and you leave materials behind for people, right, like voter guides and whatnot, eventually the momentum will start picking up. So I just think you have to start somewhere. You have to start small. You have to work with what you have. You can't go from A to Z. You've got all the letters in between that you have to, take your steps with. So, it's not easy, but I think for me, I would like to see more candidates running across the state.
Yeah. Because
I really feel like that's what that's what our party is. We need to be running candidates.
Sure.
Even though the political system is what it is, we have to jump into that game in order to show voters that there is another option other than left and right, Republican and Democrat.
Yeah, I mean it's twofold. Like, yeah. One of my things there, because I'm big on the idea, like, we're playing politics, right? It's at the end of the day, until we get to Ancapistan or whatever smaller government final destination everybody may have, right? Because that can be different. When I think they're that, like, if you're not on the ballot, you don't have a chance. But my thought there, locally, right? I'm trying to think, candidates is kind of half the equation, right? You have to have messaging as well as the candidates, right? Because if you just have the candidates and the messaging sucks, right? Like, we're trying to go up against a rigged, corrupt system of the duopoly, right? Like, everything from ballot access to everything else, it's rigged against third parties intentionally, right? So getting out there, but I feel like messaging is pretty important too, right? In the sense that the problem is, if you have the best messaging in the world but no candidates, it doesn't really do anything, right? You convert a bunch of people to libertarians, and then they look down to vote and they still have to check an R or a D, right? Because there's no libertarians on the ballot. So that's kind of my thought is, like, how do we kind of do it both ways, right? Like, so many people fight over, messaging versus candidates. And I'm like, why are you arguing? You both have like really valid points, because both of those things are essential, right? That's where I think messaging, how do we kind of coordinate the two, right? Where that's one thing. And I don't think it was executive session. So I'll allude to something I heard you say in a meeting that I was, thinking about beforehand, where you were kind of bringing up some ideas about what you'd like to do in Wake County, right? As from a messaging standpoint. And I thought that was really cool of, you've got great candidates here. So now how do we bring in the messaging to actually throw some weight behind that, right? Where, obviously the candidates do their own messaging, right? They're on their socials doing their interviews and stuff. But how do we, as the state party, but really to a most extent, Wake County, right? If we have candidates in Gaston, it's going to be on Gaston. How do you tie that messaging together, and what does that look like? And how do we really kind of ramp that up? Because I think that's the path to success.
That's a really, really great question. And I think, first of all, you have to know who you're speaking to.
Okay.
Wake County is a blue county. So talking about guns and Second Amendment, you're not going to get anywhere.
Right.
But talking about legalization of marijuana and legalization of drugs, or even criminal justice reform, healthcare.
Sure.
These are issues that Wake County voters care about. And so I think maybe doing a little bit of voter research and a little bit of research on the data and on what people care about in your area, if you're a red county or a blue county or a purple county, you'll find out what your voters and what your constituents care about in that area. Is it some new thing? Are they trying to chop down trees? But, is it economical for them to chop down trees or not chop down the trees? So, every county's got something different.
Sure.
So do the data, do the research, and then we're having a candidate training session on June 4th.
Okay.
Where we're trying to get all of our candidates on the same page, because you don't want them running all over the place with 20 different messages. You want to hone them in on about 3 to 4, maybe 5, and everyone focus on those issues that's important to your county. So we try to stay away from national topics, because we can't change White House from Wake County. Right. But we can change things on a local level and in our backyards. So I think first you need to find out who you're talking to and what is important to them.
Yeah.
Because if you're over here, you're super passionate about guns, super passionate about being able to have a tank in your front yard, which is awesome. It doesn't work in Wake County.
Sure.
It might work in Rockingham County, but it doesn't work in Wake County. So finding out what people care about, and then going from there, bringing a libertarian perspective to what people care about. I think that's where you start.
Well, I think that, one thing that's neat, where, because I've noticed a trend, because I've talked to quite a few Wake candidates now, and kind of a recurring theme has been school choice, right? And really just the broader idea of choice, right? Choice in everything, which is a very libertarian idea. But school choice is interesting as I think through North Carolina, right? Like historically, when you think of the uniparty, you kind of had one side that was doing a little more, and then we had Cooper, virtue signal, where he declared something about school choice, but didn't actually change or do anything to further school choice. Yeah. And I noticed that a lot of that's there, and I think that that's something that really is becoming a winning issue, right? Where I think people on the left and the right, at the end of the day, they're just like, hey, we want better outcomes. And at this point, we're kind of just saying, what can we do to get better outcomes? And they're open for it. And I think of, that's something that libertarians have been leading for a long time, right? It's not like, hey, we're hopping on the bandwagon. I feel like that's something that, from a messaging standpoint, I really like that the Wake candidates were kind of leading with that, because it's like, hey, we're not coming to this position because Cooper put out a a statement on it, right? We're coming to this because it aligns with our philosophy, our beliefs, and we've been there. And I think it's just now becoming a really appealing idea to more and more people. Are you seeing that? I mean, just because you're sitting here talking about, the research of what's there, and I noticed that was a big common theme. Is that something that's part of the strategy in Wake? Like, is that it? Talk to me through that.
Yes.
Yeah.
School choice is something I'm very passionate about, and it was something we ran on in 2020. Both of my kids go to a private school, and so I'm a big advocate that in the system that we currently have, that the money should follow the students, not the systems, and not a school. So I'm huge proponent of that and huge supporter of that. And it's actually a winning issue. And the beautiful thing about school choice is if you want to send your kids to a more conservative, more of a religious type of environment, more of a private school where they, align with your religious values, you can do so. If you want to send your kids to more of a left-leaning liberal arts school or a liberal school, one that is more woke, you can do that. In fact, we have a school choice event coming up in 2 days. Actually, on Wednesday, we have the head of the Longleaf School of the Arts coming to speak to us. And that is actually more of a left-leaning, liberal style, LGBTQ friendly type of charter school in Wake County. So it goes both ways, depending on how you want to raise your kids and what values you want to instill in your kids. It goes both ways. So it's a winning issue. There should not just be one government option of brainwashing. Yeah. You should be able to have multiple choices based on your value system.
We can brainwash them however we want to, as opposed to letting the government do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It should be up to the kids and the parents to decide what is best, mainly the parents as the adults to decide how, when, and where their kids are educated. And so anybody that disagrees with that is just kind of off their rocker a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I sent my school or my kid to private school as well. And then last year I decided to homeschool. So we've been homeschooling for 2 years and absolutely love it. The funny thing that I looked at there where, people are kind of virtue signaling about it, right? Where Roy Cooper came out and declared, national school choice something, but now they're looking at ways to make my life harder, right? Like as a homeschool. And that's one of the things where I love seeing homeschool growth like across the country, but across North Carolina, but the idea of it, like that the government's going to make additional requirements on me. Like I promise, government, I care way more about my kid's education than you ever could, right? And I think most homeschool parents do, right? Because you're making a conscious decision to either spend less time making money, right? Like or doing something else, right? To spend time investing there, and that's why I just get a kick out of it, where he's talking about school choice and then coming down and proposing things to make it more difficult. As far as what we have to do as homeschool parents. I think that's really a winning issue too, just in the idea of like, competition, right? Like even if you're not completely against, because that's something that, we can be pragmatic about, right? Like, I think we're both in the camp, being on the more radical side, ideologically, right? So with that. Yes. And, I think if tomorrow the Department of Education and the entire public school system collapsed, I don't think you or I would really have a problem with it, but I think there's a lot of people out there in North Carolina, right? A lot of Republicans, Democrats, independents who, if we want to win, we have to win them over, right? There's no way, at least a big enough chunk of them, and maybe they're not on board with that idea at first, but there's good ways to message that, and I think we really kind of have to figure that out of how do we take that idea. And one of the things that I was thinking around that is like, people get competition, right? Like people get, hey, if Netflix and Hulu are competing for my business, right? They're either going to have to offer me more shows or they're going to have to bring their prices down or come up with something, right? Competition results in better stuff for us. And I almost wonder, like, is that the route that we really need to push it through and say, look, and, you know, I know I've got an ANCAP flag behind me. I know that my end goal is to abolish the public school system. But, you know, even with that end goal in mind, you know, if we had dollars chase the students, I think that would just be a natural result. Either that or the public school systems might actually get better, right? Like if they have to compete.
Boom. That's
the thing that I think,
that's what's happening. Yeah.
Is they have to compete. And how do we convince that? Because that's the reality that I think about, where I believe that libertarianism is the most beautiful philosophy. But how do we get from 1 to 5% of the vote to 50%? How do we take some of those radical ideas and message them in a way that appeals to blue voters in Wake County? Right? You said it, you guys. It's a pretty blue area. There's obviously a lot of love in people who lean left and blue towards teachers unions and things like that. How do we reach those people?
Well, part of school choice is public school is one of those options.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for my kids, and it doesn't work for some other people's kids. It's a different pace. It's a different style. I'm not a fan of it, and that's okay. And it's also okay if you love it. If you're a big government lover and you love the government teaching you and babysitting your kids, then that's cool too. That's completely okay. But don't tell me you're going to limit my kids' options and my kids' ability to learn the way I feel like is better for them, because then I start getting mad. Don't tell my kids, don't tell me how to raise my kids. I won't tell you how to raise yours.
Yeah.
You can advocate for public schooling and government schooling all you want. That's awesome. That's part of one of the choices of homeschooling, charter schools, private schools, online education. There should be multiple ways that your kids can learn and adapt to society in a way that works for them. No child learns the same. No child is exactly the same. Some of them pick up things faster. Some of them are a little bit slower, and they teach at a pace where if you don't keep up, they're either going to fake their grades and just basically pass them so they can keep their funding, or maybe they'll fail them. So public school is a great option for some people. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, coming from it with an option like that, where it's okay to love government schools. It's fine. But I don't personally love them.
Sure.
So, I mean, if they don't understand that, then that's on them. And that's on them to explain why they believe government knows your kids better than the parents. And that's exactly what happened in Virginia, on why that governor ended up losing, when they said that parents don't have a right to teach their kids and don't know their kids better than government, the teachers do. And it's like, what? So common sense, I think, is the way to win them over, and being okay with them loving their government education.
Yeah, because I look through things, and and it's probably, the economics of it is like a big piece of my philosophy and my activism, the way my brain works. But I kind of look at it just from the standpoint of, like, just do the math behind it, right? I forget whether it was I forget whether it was Michael Oakes or Matt Lazak who came in real prepared and, like, had, like, down to the dollar, like, how much a student in Wake County in the public school system had. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, boy. And it was a number. It was like $10,000 or $15,000 per student or something like that in the public school.
9,000 something, maybe 9,200.
Yeah, it was close to 10,000. But then I just said, look at the system there. And this is something that I try to get people. And maybe it's just because my mind's economics, and maybe there's a lot of people who would take it, tell me, hey, it doesn't matter. But I look at it and say, if you like teachers, which I like teachers, right? But if you look at like someone now who's a public school teacher who is a great teacher, does things that are great to leave an impact on their student. Because I had a public school teacher who really left an impact on me, right? But teachers are so underpaid versus what they could be if you had a free market situation, right? Where let's say it's 9,000, right? Round down to 9,000. Let's say that you had a small micro school, right? There's a teacher in your neighborhood who just says, oh, there's 15 kids in my neighborhood. I'm going to just teach these 15 kids. I'm going to do it my own and operate like his little business. 15 kids at 9,000 a pop. That teacher's now making a 6-figure salary, right? There's no school buses, so now it's green, right? Everyone wants to talk about being green now. Hey, the kids can just walk in their neighborhoods there. Maybe you have to figure something out. But that idea of micro schools, I see it as the big result is teachers end up getting paid what they're worth because you're stripping out like county level administrators who are making 6-figure salaries and don't spend a minute with a single student, right? Like that's just like everything in government, there's so much bloat. So I've been trying to, that's kind of what I've been using, like at the personal level, like when trying to propose solutions for what happens if you get rid of government schools. I don't know what the right message is, who's going to crack it with what silver bullet it's going to be that suddenly makes Republicans and Democrats en masse say, wow, the libertarians are right on this. And, we need to at least give public school system the potential to sink or swim, right? Right now it's propped up by unlimited taxation and money coming at it, and it doesn't really matter what the outcomes is. It'd be interesting to see if you allowed dollars to follow the students, and then the best teachers would kind of rise to the top and be innovative and say, hey, how can I make a big impact on these students but cut the rest of these salaries out, right? And let free markets work. We've seen business adapt through COVID and everything go into virtual. Like, I feel like we just need that same kind of free market innovation in education as well. So you said something that was interesting, where you said that Wake, and I'm sorry for changing the topic there. But
go for it.
You said that Wake had all 6 sheriff candidates come and that and talk to you guys, which I'm personally like inspired by that. We only have 2 sheriff candidates here in Gaston. I invited both of them to come out to a rally that they did. They both read it. Neither one of them responded, nor came out. And I get maybe my local government is probably a little upset at us because we've been doing more protesting than coalition building with them lately. But how do you get in that situation where they want to come to you, like and get them to court that? Because I feel like I'd like to be in a position where they would rather work with us than fight us. But right now we're kind of in a fight stage locally. How do you kind of do that and make your audience kind of appealing to the uniparty candidates that may want to participate and try and win over the libertarians there? How do you do that coalition building and reaching to non-libertarian guests, I guess?
Yeah, it's great. Great question. There's actually 10 candidates running for Wake County Sheriff right now.
Wow.
And we had a forum back in October. We had 9 of them show up. The only one that didn't show up was the incumbent, which is Sheriff Gerald Baker.
Okay.
He's not a big fan of mine because I sued him and won the lawsuit. I don't know if you knew about that or not.
No.
Yeah, so I just did an interview with Officer Antoine Thomas. It just aired actually this morning. I can send it to you later. It talked all about the lawsuit back in 2020 when our current Sheriff Baker, decided unilaterally to halt all pistol permit processing and stop accepting all new incoming pistol permits. And unfortunately, in our state, the only way to buy a pistol is to apply for a permit.
Right. Or have your concealed carry.
Yeah. Right now, it's the only way to do it until we have constitutional carry or whatever. So he decided on March 24th that he was going to suspend it all. And he was blaming it on COVID, saying they were short-staffed. Well, he was 755 backlog past 90 days, which you're not allowed to do. Past 90 days, people waiting for their pistol permits to process. So they could not buy a pistol. And the riots were going on. People were sort of freaked out. They wanted to buy a gun. A lot of them were first-time gun buyers. So on March 26th, I got with an attorney and we sued the Wake County Sheriff's Office and the Wake County Sheriff. It went to the Supreme Court in North Carolina. It was Judge Shirley Baker or something like that, or I can't remember the judge's name, but they sided with me.
Wow. And was it you personally who did it? Like you were like,
yes, I was plaintiff.
Okay.
Yes, I could send you the actually filed motion.
Dude, that's awesome.
So I sued the sheriff. It was filed on March 31st, and the judge gave him 7 days to resume processing the pistol permits, or he's in violation of the court order. So that happened. It resonated throughout the whole state. All the Second Amendment supporters and the gun lovers were so happy. So that happened. So he didn't show up to our forum for a very good reason. He doesn't like me very much. And a lot of the candidates that are running against him, they don't like him either. He's fired people for no reason because he doesn't like them. He's played favorites. A lot of them call him a dictator. So they're really going after him. So they gladly accepted our invitation. We did a forum. Ken Pinkowski was the moderator.
Okay. We
had 9 candidates for Wake County Sheriff all show up to a Wake LP meetup. We had like 87 people there. It was amazing. 3 or 4 news networks were there.
Wow.
And they covered it. And since then, 6 of them have come on their own to hang out with us to try to win over their vote win over our vote on a personal level. So that's how it happened. And
the LP doesn't have a candidate in the race then, does it?
We don't have a Libertarian sheriff running.
Okay.
We have some. Hang on one second. There's a call coming in that's messing me up. Can you see me now?
Okay. Yeah, you've been here. Yeah.
So, the primaries are happening soon. So we're about to find out who the Republican candidate is and who the Democrat candidate is. And then we're going to have a final debate. If it's not Gerald Baker, because Gerald Baker will not show up. He does not like me at all because I sued him. So that created a lot of momentum with the sheriffs. We have a relationship with the sheriff's department now. Whoever gets elected, we're going to be able to go into their office, sit down in their office, and have a chat, and they will welcome us because we've developed a relationship with all of the sheriff candidates right now. We have a feeling that Gerald Baker is not going to win. So it's
I mean, if you're in a if you're in a place where all 9 other candidates show up and one doesn't, that looks pretty bad, especially if there's media coverage there. So, I hope so, because he sounds pretty petty, which unfortunately, petty law enforcement seems to be a common trend everywhere nowadays. I know I'm kind of dealing with
representative. There was somebody there on his behalf taking notes, making sure nobody was talking bad about him. Basically.
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, that's awesome. I would love to see that happen kind of locally where I am, and I get that it's different, right? That you get 60 something people out there. That's an audience that they would like to speak to, and I see that I see the candidates are going to the Republican events and the Democrat events and kind of putting out things there. How does that work? Do they know, because I know that, I guess from a bylaws standpoint, right, we can't endorse, at least as a party, right, any of them, right? If they're a Republican or a Democrat, if they're not a Libertarian, they can't win our endorsement. as a party, of course, they could win our individual endorsements because we can say whatever.
We can recommend the person who's most aligned with our values. We can recommend a candidate that we prefer over another.
Okay.
The attorney that I worked with to sue the sheriff is actually a candidate right now. He's running for district attorney.
Okay.
I fully support this guy. He's amazing. He's running as a Republican, but he's got a lot of kind of overlining values overlapping values that we share. There's a few things here and there that are like, not really very libertarian, but overall, this guy is awesome. And so I'm actually advocating for, his name is Jeff Dobson. He's running for district attorney of Wake County. And they have a lot of say-so with what happens in a county.
They do. I have a particular my county DA who I wish he would go away. It's kind of the opposite. I live in a neighborhood and there are 2 Travis Page signs, and every time I walk around my neighborhood, I have to fight back that urge to knock on my neighbor's door and just tell them what an awful person they're supporting there. Because he's still prosecuting this guy for something he didn't even do. Pushed it from October. Yeah. We're still dealing with that, and the DA could drop those charges, right? Like that's kind of the thing. So why are they keeping torturing? I like that, man. I'd love to see my local party kind of get to the point where the other parties are wooing us instead of fighting us.
They're coming out to find out what we believe, and if we can actually split their vote. We have over 6,500 registered libertarians in Wake County.
Wow.
Which is a good amount of voters. So we can actually sway them one way or the other. We really can mess someone's election up now. So if they don't get our vote, it's going to go to the other person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe that's to no one. So
what's it going to take, and what's kind of the timeline on it here? So when I think through it, we obviously we got to get better at messaging, right? And I like that idea of kind of messaging to what works too, right? What works in Wake from a messaging standpoint may be very different from what works in Cleveland County, right? And vice versa as far as kind of where we focus, right? But as I think through that, right, where you kind of have, and again, I'm very much a fan of local, right, where I think, you have the most power to change things at the town, county, city level, right? But at the same time, right, we've got a state party and a national party, right? And this podcast is the state party podcast, right? So, and I think that's something, and I just took over as treasurer, so I'll be working towards it as well. But I'd love to see kind of,
awesome, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, thanks. I mean, how do we do that, right? Because I want to see bold, helpful messaging coming out of the state party as well. The problem there is, do they come out at the state party level and amplify something that may really appeal to people in Cleveland County, but maybe not so much in Wake, or really amplify something that works there? How do we kind of solve that, the calculus of that? Like where does the messaging come from, and what should the messaging look like? And I guess almost that's even a question, hopefully that the audience appreciates, but even for me, you've got a big successful county affiliate. How do we at the state level kind of help in that messaging equation?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, find out what matters to North Carolina voters. Find out what's most popular. The top 3 issues, whether it's school choice, healthcare opportunities, or housing affordability, something like that. Pick 3 messages that will resonate throughout the state and hammer that for a solid year. Keep your messaging on point, consistent, consecutive, the same, and just stay away from national issues. I would say focus 100% on North Carolina and the issues that are happening across the state, and maybe have a brainstorming session with the executive committee and find out what the top 3 issues are in North Carolina. What do voters care about the most? And how do we construct our simple messaging to reach those most important issues?
Right.
And then put a little effort into campaigning only on those for a solid year, just hammering it, same thing over and over and over and over in different creative ways, and see if that makes an impact, because I really think it will. Again, you got to know who you're speaking to and what you're saying to them, because we're talking over their head most of the time. They don't care about this and that. We keep saying taxation is theft, and abolish the IRS, and abolish the ATF, and abolish this, abolish that. Yeah, it's a great idea, of course, but it's almost going from A to Z. I think we need to learn how to chip away at it, to where we have small victories here, small victories here. So libertarians look like they're winning.
Sure.
We need to have like Spike Cohen talked about this. We need a culture of winning. We need to develop a culture of small wins after another small win after another small win, instead of constantly losing all the time.
Yeah.
We need to celebrate the small victories and build on that, and build on this and build on that. And I think it comes from finding out what voters care about. And it takes a lot of research. I mean, you can look at research from the left side and the right side, take both of them, find out what's really important to the common voter, and hammer those issues.
No, I like it. I think that's kind of that's got to be the way to do it, right? Is find what really is going to appeal to the masses, because and I think that's one of the things that bothers me about the whole system too, with the duopoly and the uniparty, as I call them, where at this point a plurality of North Carolina voters are unaffiliated, right?
Yeah.
So where's the unaffiliated representation in the NCGA? Right. Where's the representation of that? So, so many people are, and that's one of the things that, maybe we all have to figure out, and maybe what works in some states is different and even different areas. But I look at it and say, I just try to think through the system where you have this left-right polarization, right? Where you can where some people would be like, oh, you're in a left area, so play more to the left-leaning stuff. Or if you're in a right area, play more to the right-leaning stuff. And I almost wonder, are we better served just taking like that hardcore libertarian position and appealing to those unaffiliated who's like, because I think it was Sean Hall when I was talking to him in the podcast that actually went live the date that they were filming this, but where he said he's running unopposed, and he said the whole reason I'm running is just because I want the incumbent who I'm running about to know exactly how many people in his district would vote for anybody but him, right? And I feel like there's a lot of these like voters who are just so sick of the system, where they're maybe even almost centrist, where they're like, hey, I voted in Republicans, they did a bad job, so I voted in Democrats and they did a bad job. So then they find in this system where they're just like, the system sucks, I don't like Republicans or Democrats, and I'm just going to stay out of it and complain or detach. I feel like that's a group that we really need to learn how to message to, and because I feel like there's people like that in red areas that would maybe traditionally be red voters that are not voting. There's people like that in blue areas that are potentially blue, and vice versa, right? And that's the one thing I think that I'd love to see. Maybe we find a way to find that out. At the state level, potentially the county level, if people want to do research, or even the national level. I would just love to see, how do we as a party go after that, right? Because there's one way of trying to peel off Republicans and Democrats, and that's that strategy of, hey, if you peel off enough of them, maybe you can even impact an election, right? But if we can tap into those unaffiliateds and those independents, that's how I feel like that's kind of the thing that sets the domino pile in motion, right? Where that's how you win, in my opinion, right? Like that. But is there enough there? Like I've seen it at the state level, but where are those unaffiliated voters, right? Are there enough of them that if you guys came out and said, we're not going to appeal to Republicans or Democrats, but we're going to come up with a platform that all of these unaffiliated voters are going to want? Like, is that something that we should look into, right? That's just, the way my mind works theorizing these kind of things. I don't know the answer, but
I think you're onto something, because if you look at the trends, the fastest growing group of voters is unaffiliated.
Yeah.
They are leaving the establishment parties in droves so fast. I think the last count was the Republicans lost 9,000 members, like in a month. And they're mainly going unaffiliated. I think it's showing that people are sick of politics. It's showing me that people are sick of the same old and the back and forth and the arguing. So it's actually an opportunity for libertarians to have clear and concise, common sense messaging that will actually resonate with where they're at.
Yeah.
And make them pay attention, because the same rhetoric that libertarians have been saying for years, let's be honest, it hasn't really been working. So let's figure out a way to make more sense to people who are searching for something that isn't crazy, that isn't way out in left field somewhere, some sort of hypothetical theory or some sort of utopian idea. You and I both are probably on the same page as far as our world views. It's probably very similar, but it scares people, to think of a world with no government. Who's going to tell us what to do, and who's going to boss us around? Who's going to tell us how to live our lives? I don't know what to do if somebody doesn't build the roads for me. This scares people. So, I mean, we should come from a more common sense area of freedom and liberty, or talking about choice and helping people. And I think that's another thing we talked about last session, was affiliates around the state should be doing charity events, even if it's just 5 people. I loved what you were doing with Spike down there in Gastonia, getting people involved.
We got another one next week, man.
Yeah, becoming activists, man. People are paying attention to that on a statewide level. People are watching that. I'm watching it going, wow, that's really awesome. It's like a little fire burning down there in Gastonia, and keep that up.
I'm sad. I'm gonna miss the next one, even though I kind of started organizing these. We've had a vacation to the Outer Banks going, and I said, our town council meets the first and third Tuesday of the month, and I was talking to Spike, and I said, Spike, I can't make the first one because of this Outer Banks trip. He couldn't make the third one, and I said, well, Spike, you draw a bigger crowd than me, man. So we're gonna have Spike come, next Tuesday to be there. I'm gonna miss it, but I'll be watching it from my vacation.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But
keep that kind of stuff up.
I mean, I think that's that's a big one that I'd love to see. When you think of successful affiliates, right? I feel like comparing, my new affiliate to your established affiliate, right? Wake, you guys are kind of at a point where you're able, where I was thinking that difference, right? Where sheriff candidates are coming in, you kind of have matured to the point where you're already big enough. And I kind of look at it here where, I don't know if they took us seriously, but they will, right? Because for a small affiliate, when they see things out there, right? Like there was a member, the vice chair of the North Carolina Republican Liberty Caucus just showed up. And then when we were in speaking last time, somebody from the
Wilson?
No, it's I think it's the third vice chair. It's
okay.
Brandon Deal is who
okay.
it was. And while we were in speaking, someone from the local Democrat Party came out
Mhm.
and was asking what it's about. So I'm joking. I'm going to be really sad that I'm personally missing this, because even though it was started by libertarians, we're going to have tripartisan representation, like members of libertarians, the Republicans, and the
That's
Democrats. So
amazing.
I'm wondering, like, what are the city council members going to do when their own party is outside calling? Like, I don't know. Part of me is losing a little bit of hope in that. But that's kind of where I think, like, as much as I love to try to emulate what Wake's doing, I don't know if it's going to work yet, because I feel like I need to get at least to the point where we can get 10 people to a meeting, right? Where that's where I'm thinking, maybe, building building a successful affiliate. Like, what does that really mean? Like, for a smaller one, how do we do that? That's kind of where I'm trying to think, just at my own county level. How do we do that? And I
Well,
think
you got to think, how can you steer the ship of politics in your area without being elected,
yeah,
without getting elected? How can you do that? And it comes from showing up to town council meetings, creating volunteer events. If there's a food bank nearby, go work out a deal with them where every 3 months your party is going to help bag groceries for the needy.
yeah,
When the community catches on that libertarians care, they actually care about people, and the more we volunteer, the less their tax money has to go to take care of people, because we're doing it.
yeah,
Neighbors helping neighbors, friends helping friends, friends helping enemies, libertarians helping Democrats, libertarians helping Republicans.
yeah.
When they see the libertarians out here doing good deeds and doing nice things for people and actually practicing what we preach and pretending like there is no government, we have to do it ourselves, I think that people start paying attention.
Okay.
So community events and outreaches is a really, really good way to do it. And even if it's just 4 people, make a post about it. Push it out. Hey, the Libertarian Party of Gaston City, or what, I don't know what county it is.
Yeah, Gaston County.
Yeah. We're doing this weekend, and then take some pictures, post it out there. Hey, this is what we're doing. And they're like, people are going to be like, oh, look at those nice libertarians doing that again. Eventually it catches on.
Yeah.
So I think, again, just working with what you have, working with the resources that you have, starting small and then slowly growing is really good. I think it could take off in any county.
Awesome.
As people really believe that libertarians care.
Yeah.
We're not just a bunch of angry, fat, overweight white dudes that want to smoke weed and not pay their taxes. There's more to libertarianism than that.
Sure. Yeah.
So we're not some fat guy running across the stage at national convention. Like, we actually do care about people.
Yeah, I mean, that happens. We just don't exclude that guy, right? We're just,
Yeah.
we're not all like that, but as long as he's not hurting anybody, right? As long as he's not hurting anybody or taking his stuff, I really don't care what people do. But you're right.
We don't wear boots on our
break
head.
that. Yeah, we have to break that if people, and I think the local ways to do that. Well, man, I don't want to kill you on time because of the time commitment, but I'm always thankful. I love what you're doing in Wake. I'm excited to kind of see this campaign season come through. I'm excited to keep talking to more of your candidates because they've been great. But Travis, I always like to kind of close out. Any final things that you either kind of want to plug, direct people to, or closing thoughts for everybody? I know can we donate to your campaign? Your chance to plug whatever you want to plug at this point, I guess.
At this point, if anyone feels the need to donate to a really good cause, just go to wakelp.org and hit the donate button. I promise you, we are putting all the funds to really good use, and all of our events and our messaging is working. We're growing, and we're running 17 candidates, and we really could use all the help we can get because we're outspent 100-1 right now, even with what we have. So, even $5 goes a long way, trust me. So that's my closing thoughts. Just don't get discouraged. Don't give up. Keep working hard, because I really firmly believe that hard work always pays off.
Yeah.
It always does. It never returns void. So just keep it up and don't lose hope. And it's a cause worth working towards and worth fighting for, because it's about freedom and liberty. We're behind the 8 ball on it, but it doesn't mean give up. So that's my closing statement.
Awesome, man.
Thank you so much for having me on.
No,
Mike.
Travis, thank you so much. And you heard it there. If you want to support the work that they're doing at the Wake LP and all of those candidates, wakelp.org, throw them a little donation. Travis, thank you so much. Thank you to all our listeners. We will see you next week. Keep on fighting for liberty right here in NC.